For years, James had lived in silence, the kind that echoed through every corner of his mansion. Since the night of the accident, Emily's laughter had been buried under layers of grief. Doctors had said she might never recover emotionally, and James believed them. He had tried everything: therapy sessions, new toys, even vacations to distract her, but nothing worked. She stayed quiet, broken, staring out of windows as if waiting for someone who would never return. But that afternoon, when he opened the door and saw the new housemaid spinning Emily's wheelchair like it was part of a fairy tale, James froze. Emily wasn't just smiling. She was clapping her hands, however weakly, to the rhythm of the maid's playful dance. Her lips moved as if she was trying to repeat the funny voices the young woman was making. For the first time in years, his daughter looked alive. James felt his throat tighten. Tears burned his eyes as he dropped his keys to the floor. The sound startled Emily, breaking the fragile spell. Instantly, her laughter stopped. She curled up into herself again, her small hands gripping the sides of the wheelchair. The light that had filled the room vanished, as if someone had blown out a candle. "Who are you?" James asked, his voice trembling between gratitude and fear. The woman stood up straight, smoothing her uniform. "I'm Clara Mendez. The agency sent me this morning. I'm here to work." James frowned. No one had told him about a new employee, but his eyes drifted back to Emily, who was now staring at her lap, avoiding everyone's gaze. The transformation had been so sudden, so brutal, that it made James wonder if he had just imagined her joy. Something about the way Clara looked at Emily was different. She didn't see a fragile, broken girl. She saw a child who could still dream, laugh, and live. James didn't know it yet, but Clara's arrival was about to change everything. The following morning, James lingered by his office window, pretending to work while his eyes tracked Clara in the garden. She wasn't just cleaning. She was kneeling in the grass, animatedly talking to Emily, who watched her from the veranda. James couldn't hear the words, but the scene pulled him in. Clara was pointing at flowers as if each one carried a secret personality. Her voice shifted pitch, sometimes high and dramatic, other times low and shy, until Emily's lips curved upward in the faintest smile. James pressed a hand to his chest. That tiny smile was more than he had seen in 2 years. Memories of his late wife, Laura, flashed in his mind. Her laughter, the way she used to push Emily on the swing, the sparkle in their daughter's eyes. The pain of that night crashed back. The storm, the screech of tires, the final goodbye he never got to say. His guilt was endless. If only he had driven slower, or if he hadn't convinced Laura to come along, maybe she would still be here. But Clara's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. Emily was clapping again, stronger this time. James blinked rapidly, fighting the tears that threatened to fall. His daughter wasn't lost. Not completely. Later that day, Clara appeared at his study door holding a tray. "Sir, I thought Emily might like a snack." She barely touched her breakfast. James sighed. "She doesn't eat much. You can try, but don't expect." Before he could finish, Clara set the tray before Emily. The sandwiches were cut into butterflies with cherry tomato antennae and lettuce wings. "Look," Clara said brightly, "they're hungry butterflies, and only you can save them." Emily's eyes flickered with curiosity. Slowly, with trembling hands, she picked up one butterfly and took a bite. James nearly stumbled back. It had been months since Emily ate willingly. Clara smiled at her gently, not making a fuss, just treating it like the most natural thing in the world. That night, James found himself replaying every moment. Clara wasn't doing anything miraculous. She wasn't using therapy techniques or medical strategies. She was simply treating Emily like a child, not a patient, not a fragile reminder of tragedy, but a little girl who still deserved joy. As days passed, Emily's small reactions grew. She began pointing to things she wanted Clara to talk about. She raised her arms to mimic Clara's silly dances. Her eyes followed Clara everywhere. And James, though wary, found himself secretly watching too, fighting the tug of hope he had buried so deeply. But what James didn't know was that hope, once awakened, had the power to reveal truths he wasn't ready for. and some truths would change his life forever. By the end of the week, Clara had become part of Emily's daily rhythm. She spun ordinary chores into grand adventures. Dusting the shelves turned into a quest for hidden treasures. Sweeping the hallway became a racetrack for Emily's wheelchair. Even folding laundry transformed into a puppet show with socks talking in squeaky voices. For Emily, each day seemed to breathe a little more color into her world. She still didn't speak, but her hands clapped more often, her eyes followed Clara with growing trust, and, most importantly, she laughed. That fragile sound, once thought lost, now echoed through the halls like sunlight after rain. James, however, struggled with what he was feeling. Each laugh from Emily was a dagger of guilt and a spark of hope at the same time. He watched from the shadows, through windows, behind doors, terrified that if he stepped too close, the magic would break. The memory of Laura haunted him constantly. She had been the one who could light up Emily's world. And now Clara was doing the same. One afternoon, Clara placed a small speaker on the table and turned on soft children's music. She started twirling clumsily around the room, exaggerating her steps as if she were on stage. "Come on, Princess Emily," she laughed. "You wave your arms, and I'll move my feet." Emily's arms lifted, trembling but determined, swaying with the rhythm. For the first time since the accident, she was moving with joy, not obligation. James, watching from the doorway, felt tears burn his eyes. He wanted to join them, to step into that circle of laughter, but fear froze him in place. What if his presence scared Emily back into silence? What if he ruined everything? Then, something happened that shattered the careful distance James had kept. As Clara danced closer to Emily, the little girl's lips parted. At first it was only a murmur, almost too soft to hear. But James leaned in, his breath catching in his throat. "Emma!" The sound was broken, fragile, but unmistakable. Emily was trying to say "Mama." Clara froze, her eyes wide, but instead of making a scene, she knelt down, smiling gently. "That's beautiful." "Emily," she whispered, "your voice is so strong." She didn't correct her, didn't rush to explain. She simply accepted the moment, as if Emily's attempt at speaking was perfectly natural. James felt his knees weaken. For 2 years, he had prayed to hear his daughter's voice again, and now it was here, echoing softly through the air. But it wasn't directed at him. It was for Clara. That night, James lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Questions tore at him. Who exactly was this woman who had managed to reach Emily when doctors, specialists, and even he had failed? Why did Emily look at Clara with such trust? And why, deep down, did it hurt so much to hear his daughter call her Mama? The following days only deepened the mystery. Emily grew more attached to Clara, clapping when she arrived in the morning, pouting when she left. James caught himself feeling something he hadn't felt in years: relief. For once, Emily wasn't alone in her suffering. But James couldn't ignore the shadows creeping at the edges of this new light. He noticed the way Clara sometimes paused when she looked at the family photos on the walls, especially the ones of Laura. It wasn't just admiration. There was recognition in her eyes, something unspoken. One evening, as James gathered paperwork in his office, he overheard Clara humming a lullaby while putting Emily to bed. His breath caught. It was the exact same song Laura used to sing. Every note, every inflection, identical. He stood frozen at the door, unable to step in, his heart thundering with a mix of fear and disbelief. How could Clara know that song? For the first time, James realized that Clara's presence might not be just coincidence. And as he listened to Emily drift into sleep under Clara's voice, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was on the edge of a revelation far more dangerous than he imagined. James told himself he was imagining things. Clara couldn't possibly know Laura's lullaby. Maybe it was a coincidence, a common children's song. Still, the melody echoed in his chest long after Emily had fallen asleep. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but the drink did nothing to steady his thoughts. Over the next few days, James noticed more details that unsettled him. Clara moved through the house like she had always lived there. She knew which cabinet held Emily's favorite mug, where the blankets were kept, and even which hallway creaked under the weight of footsteps. When James asked how she knew, she only shrugged, smiling softly, as if intuition were enough of an answer. But the cracks in the mystery widened when a visitor arrived. It was a Saturday morning, the sky heavy with clouds. The doorbell rang, and James opened the door to find a woman standing there. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. She looked so much like Laura that his vision blurred. Same blonde hair, same piercing eyes, same gentle build. Emily's face twisted in horror the instant she saw her. She let out a strangled cry and clutched her chair's armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. The woman stepped forward. "Emily, it's me. Aunt Veronica." James stumbled back. "Veronica? Laura's twin sister?" The woman smiled, but the smile never reached her eyes. "Yes, I came as soon as I heard about the accident. I needed time away, but now I'm back. I want to help." Emily's reaction was immediate. She shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No," she cried out, voice breaking. It was the clearest word James had heard her say in years. Clara rushed to Emily's side, kneeling to comfort her. She held Emily's hands, whispering softly, but the girl was trembling uncontrollably, eyes fixed on Veronica with unmistakable terror. James's mind spun. Emily had barely spoken in 2 years, and now she was shouting. Why was she so terrified of Veronica? That night, James lay awake again, his thoughts a storm. Clara had brought Emily laughter and courage. Veronica, on the other hand, had sparked sheer panic. The contrast was undeniable, but as he replayed the scene in his head, he noticed something else. When Veronica had introduced herself, Clara hadn't looked surprised. Her expression had faltered, just for a second, like someone recognizing a long-feared shadow. Over the following week, the atmosphere in the mansion shifted. Veronica began inserting herself everywhere, taking over Emily's meals, insisting on supervising playtime, and questioning Clara's influence. "Don't you think she's getting too attached?" Veronica whispered to James one evening. "She's vulnerable. You don't want her clinging to a stranger." James hesitated. He had seen the progress Clara brought. But Veronica's words planted small doubts, and Clara felt it. She grew quieter around James, though with Emily, she remained as warm and inventive as ever. One afternoon, while Clara was tidying Emily's room, she overheard a chilling conversation. Veronica's voice, low and sharp, slipped through the half-closed door. "You know, Emily, it was your fault that night. Your crying distracted your mother. That's why she lost control of the car. If you hadn't been so loud, she'd still be alive." Emily whimpered softly, trying to cover her ears. Clara froze, her blood turning to ice. "And if you tell anyone about this," Veronica continued, her tone now laced with venom, "I'll leave. And then your father will be all alone. Do you want that?" Clara's hand tightened on the doorknob. She wanted to storm in to protect Emily, but fear held her still. She knew if she confronted Veronica too soon, the woman would twist it back on her. Instead, Clara slipped away quietly, her mind racing. That night, Clara wrote down everything she had heard, but when she considered telling James, doubt gnawed at her. Would he believe her? Or would Veronica's cold charm convince him otherwise? The next day, Emily drew something on a scrap of paper during one of Clara's storytelling games. It was simple, childlike, but horrifying. 2 women in a car, identical in every way. One holding the steering wheel, the other pulling it away. A small figure, Emily, crying in the back seat. Clara stared at the drawing, her pulse pounding in her ears. Emily had witnessed something the night of the accident, something no one else knew. She crouched beside Emily, whispering gently, "Sweetheart, did you see this happen?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. Slowly, she nodded. Clara's heart nearly stopped. The truth was darker than she had imagined. If Emily was right, Laura's death hadn't been an accident. And Veronica wasn't just dangerous. She was hiding a secret that could destroy them all. Clara knew the truth couldn't stay hidden much longer. Emily's drawings, her trembling whispers, her sudden outbursts of fear, all pointed to one horrifying possibility. Veronica had been there the night of the accident. and she had done something unspeakable. But how could Clara convince James? Every time she tried to bring it up, Veronica was there, weaving her careful lies. "Don't you find it strange, James?" she'd murmur. Since Clara arrived, Emily's moods have been unstable. Children cling to anyone who spoils them. James's confusion deepened. He wanted to trust Clara, but Veronica was family, blood. And yet, Emily's terrified cries whenever Veronica entered the room couldn't be ignored. The breaking point came one evening when James returned from his study to find Emily sobbing in her wheelchair, clutching Clara's arm. Veronica stood nearby, her smile thin and sharp. "She's exaggerating," Veronica said smoothly. "You know how children are." But Emily's voice cut through the lie. For the first time in 2 years, she shouted words with desperate clarity. "She hurt Mama." The room froze. James's face drained of color. Clara tightened her arms protectively around Emily as the child repeated. Through tears, she pulled the car. She made it crash. James's world tilted. His mind raced back to every unanswered question, every inconsistency, every flicker of coldness in Veronica's eyes. It all fell into place with terrifying clarity. "Veronica," his voice shook with rage. "Is it true?" For the first time, the mask cracked. Veronica's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing into something darker. "Laura always had everything. The husband, the child, the life that should have been mine. I just wanted her to let go." The confession poured out like poison, filling the room. Clara stepped back, shielding Emily as James's anger exploded. "You killed her, and you let us suffer. Let me drown in guilt. Let my daughter blame herself." His hands trembled, fists clenched. Before Veronica could escape, Clara grabbed her phone and dialed emergency services. Moments later, the police arrived. James repeated every word of her confession, his voice raw but steady. Veronica was handcuffed, her eyes burning with resentment as she was led away. When silence returned to the mansion, James collapsed to his knees beside Emily, taking her hands. "It wasn't your fault, sweetheart. Not ever. You didn't make Mama go away. Do you hear me?" Emily's tears glistened, but for the first time, she nodded with relief. "Not me," she whispered, her voice small but sure. Clara placed a hand gently on James's shoulder. Their eyes met. Two people who had fought the same battle, who had saved the same child. No words were needed. From that night onward, the house no longer felt like a tomb. Emily's laughter returned, fragile but growing stronger with each day. James carried no illusions. He couldn't bring Laura back. But he had something precious now, a daughter slowly healing, and the woman who had